Okay, so what's the film about? Well, I know it sounds odd. I mean, on paper it just sounds like your standard horror thriller. A scientist playing God, virus gets out, people turn into zombie-like creatures and start running around, munching on people. The film's a bit more than that. What the film's about is Dr. Jarvis. He wants to play God, but he wants to save mankind from its ills. He wants to stop war, he wants to stop famine. So he comes up with what he calls the cure. He actually really does want to help mankind, and we in fact hear him say this about halfway through the film. And so the question is, you know, with mankind, with all the billions of people on the planet, can we feed, can we house them? And so there's a kind of bigger, broader question asked in the film. Although we kind of lose Dr. Jarvis and we don't meet him again until near the end.
Yeah, I'd seen Douglas had put an advert in one of the local papers, who applied to it and got us all down for a sort of meeting and interviews and auditions, and it sounded really interesting, the film. And when Doug sent the story past and suggested Dr. Jarvis, I thought it sounded a really interesting character, because he's quite sort of morally complex, because he's trying to do the best for humanity, and he's got this vision to save humanity, and it's a little bit twisted, and unfortunately, because of the conflict with his superiors, it all sort of ends up starting this dreadful event. So Dr. Jarvis was quite a morally complex character, and it looked interesting to play, to try and get that kind of interesting angles to him, that he's got very driven, thinks he's doing the right things, and obviously has terrible consequences because of it.
The main character, the man, who we never actually say, but he's clearly in the autistic spectrum. The next part of the film is how he can't really deal with social interaction very well with other people. So he kind of withdraws at the start of the film, and he's not very friendly with many people because he just wants to keep himself to himself. And it's only when the world around him changes and people start to change and become more docile, almost sheep-like, that he finds his own voice, and he actually starts to go out into the world. And he has to do this because Helen, a lone survivor he meets as the film progresses, she becomes trapped, isolated, she becomes withdrawn from society, so he can actually go out and has to get the food and the water and supplies, and so it's like a role reversal. So it's not just your standard, like I say, horror thriller. We've tried to actually be a bit more broader than that, and I think you'll find that as the film progresses and obviously gets to its natural conclusion.
When you allocated a character for a role, I just immerse myself into that character, full stop. If the character has an accent, I'm in the house all week driving the missus wild with that accent. I'm talking all the time with it, you know what I mean? It's just you have to do it. There's no point, if you're going to do it, let's do it right, or at least attempt to do it right.
The casting of the film, we decided, as most people, to put on Facebook, local radio, the internet, and thankfully we've got a really good bunch of local actors. Some I've worked with before and some I haven't. And they really grasped, I think, quite early on what I was trying to get. And so there was very little on my part of having to tell them what type of character they would be playing. And I must admit, Matthew Williams, who plays the man, I think early on he captured the spirit of what the man was. He was just not a simple man, but he was a simple man as in what he wanted out of life, an intelligent character, intelligent person. But because he was withdrawn from society, he just really just wanted to get on with his own things. And I think Matthew realised that there was a kind of butterfly moment where he morphed. The character suddenly becomes more of himself and actually finds his own voice as the film goes on. Emily Alakan, who plays Helen, another amazing actor, who really grasped a role and really ran with it. So I think we were quite lucky in those respects. But then again, there's so many other people that we cast in the end that would love to use again, and maybe even either a prequel, sequel, equal, or whatever they call them these days. Maybe we can bring back the people again and make another film.
You've got to get into that character that he makes these decisions, it's for the right reasons, and you've got to be honest about that and kind of immerse yourself in that character to try and convey that on screen, that he is kind of doing this, he's very driven, he's very keen to try and help people, and this is his vision, and he's just unfortunately a bit single-minded, and runs into the conflict with Dr. Sands, which leads him to kind of move steps forward that he probably wouldn't have done so quickly if he'd been given some more time. So yeah, I think it's kind of, you've got to live that character when you're playing it, and sort of saying his lines and speaking it as him.
I think Rogers is, I think he's a nice character really. He's just been thrown into a situation where he has to do what he was trained to do, so, you know, people have to die.
Double acts. Yeah, there was quite a few double acts actually in the film. Well, we didn't write it like that and didn't realise until it was editing that there were so many. I mean, there was Dr. Jarvis and Dr. Sands at the beginning of the film, who clearly have some form of history, but it's a strained kind of relationship now. Sands brought Jarvis on many years ago to Lab 19, where the film's based. And unfortunately, Jarvis, with all good intentions, but he cuts corners, whereas Sands likes to be more middle of the road. And so there was clearly a kind of butting of heads there. Then there's Mark and Brian, who play the security force team that are dispatched by Angel's Fourth, who owns the laboratories. We'll talk more about them in a second. I don't think they'd met again before filming, and yet had a wonderful relationship. There was some nice kind of comic moments, as well as the kind of battling through various hordes of the infected. They were really nice to work with. And then there was the man and Helen, Matthew and Emily, who had to carry the majority of the film. They had a lot to do, but I think in the end the chemistry was there, so I think in the end they managed to carry the film, and without that I think it would have been, well, felt a bit flat, to be honest. So we were really lucky there as well with them. So who is Angel's Fourth? Well, they're a global company who have many labs in many countries. They're not necessarily evil, they didn't start out to be evil. However, they're so big that there are corners of their empire that shade dark. So things happen in the shadows which perhaps they don't know about or don't want to know about, and it allows people like Dr. Jarvis to come up with his cure. There was a similar outbreak a few years ago in their lab in Mexico, which Rogers managed to put down before it broke out the lab. So clearly they've got a problem in their research area, but they're not too bothered as long as the money keeps rolling in. And if we do make any more films, I would like to explore the history and what goes on behind the scenes, shall we say. So maybe we'll find out more about the company then.
For me personally, if I want someone to act in, say, a film that I've written, I'll give you 50% of that character, you give me the other 50%. And let's see where we can take it, let's see where it goes. Become that character. You know, don't do it half-heartedly, because it will show on screen. Personally, I think, you know, anyone at all who's got any ambitions to get in front of a camera, go for it. Don't hold back. You know, look at me. You know, I'm knocking on now, and I'm loving it. It's brilliant.